What's up YouTube and welcome to a new video. Now if you live in the US and you either own a 4C or you're planning to purchase an Alfa Romeo 4C, then you definitely need to keep on watching. I am namely going to show you exactly how much money you can expect to lose or perhaps even make on a 4C and what the projected values are. This video was, by the way, inspired by a comment made by Jason Wheeler, who watched the depreciation analysis for the 4C of the German market, but requested one for the US market. Now for all my European viewers, you can check out the European depreciation analysis of the 4C by clicking in the link which is appearing above here. Also make sure that you smash the subscribe button, click on the notification bell and leave a comment down below stating which car you would like to see in the next depreciation analysis. Now let's get started with the 4Cs in the US. And for those of you who are new to the channel, we're always following a few simple steps to make sure that we don't get lost in the numbers. In step number 1, we figure out the price ranges and the average price points for the 4C market. In step number 2, I will show the depreciation per year and the forecasted values for a 4C. In step number 3, we'll show the depreciation per 1000 miles, and step number 4, I'll show the cars which offer the best value for money. If you're interested in purchasing a 4C, you definitely need to stick around till the last step. In the graph which is popping up now on the screen, we see the price range for the 4Cs in the US. In the top we have a histogram and in the bottom we have a smoothed version of that histogram. We can see that we have price on the x-axis and the number of cars available for that price point on the y-axis. We can see, for example, that there are 10 cars for sale with a price just under $50,000. If we have a look to the full market, we can see that there are 89 4Cs for sale and that the cheapest one will set you back around $40,000, but that the most expensive car for sale will set you back $85,000. This means that there's a huge price range for the 4C. Now the average price point of course lays somewhere in the middle and is indicated by the dashed line which is going through the graph. This average price point is around $62,000. It's also quite evident that the market is split in two price categories, one below $55,000 and one above $55,000. We will circle back to this and explain why this is the case. But first we're going to split the graph between different 4C categories and we will start with the difference between the standard cars and the launch edition cars. That categorization is shown in the graph which is popping up now on your screen, where we have in orange the launch edition cars and in blue the standard cars. We can see that there are only 5 launch edition cars for sale and that they have an average price point of around $47,500. Now this average price point is significantly lower than the average price point for the standard cars, which sits at $62,500. And the main reason for this is that the standard cars also include new Alfa Romeo 4Cs, whereas the launch editions are of course only second-hand cars. Now it's time to move on to the price ranges for the Spider and the Coupe, which is shown in the graph over here. In blue we have the Coupe and in orange we have the Spider. Starting with the Coupe, we can see that there are only 35 Coupes for sale and that the prices start at $40,000 and stretch up to $80,000. The average price point lays around $54,000 and is indicated by the blue dotted line. Now if we look to the Spider, we can see that there are 54 cars for sale, which is a lot more than for the Coupe, and we can also see that the average price point is significantly higher than for the Coupe, as it sits at $66,500. Now this difference in average price point can be explained by the novelty of the Spider, as it was introduced at a later point than the Coupe, is therefore newer and has a higher average price. Now before we move on to step number 2, which is the depreciation per year and the forecasted values, we'll first have a look to the final categorization, which is the categorization between new and used cars. That is shown in the graph over here. Now in blue we have the used cars and in orange we have the new cars. And it is of course no surprise that the new cars are priced significantly higher than the used cars. In fact, the average price point for a new car is $71,000 and there are 51 new cars for sale. Now this has quite a high contrast to the used cars, which have an average price point of $50,000 and also only 38 cars are available for sale. Finally, this graph over here can show us two interesting things. Number 1, it explains why we saw the market split at around $55,000 in the first graph. This is namely caused by the difference between the new and the used cars. Number 2, we can see that most of the new cars are priced above $55,000 and that this was the same for the Spiders. Hence, we can conclude that most of the Spiders are new cars. Now it's time to move on to step number 2, which is the depreciation per year and the forecasted values. So let's get going. Now the graph which is popping up on your screen shows the depreciation curve for the 4C market in the US. On the horizontal axis we have model year and on the vertical axis we have price. We can also see that each car is represented by a blue bubble. Furthermore, you can see that there are black axes in the graph, and these axes show the average price point for that specific model year. You can see, for example, that the average price point for a 2018 car is just a bit over $60,000. Then finally, we have a blue line which is going through the graph, and this is the depreciation curve for a 4C. And this curve shows that the average depreciation per year for a 4C is $8,000. There is, however, a little bit more to it than that. You can also see that the depreciation curve is surrounded by a shaded area, and this shaded area shows the forecasted range for the average price point of a 4C. And it is important to mention that it shows this forecasted range with a certainty or probability of 75%. So let's figure out how that works exactly. Let's have a look to the average price point in 2015, which is a bit over $40,000. Now if we want to forecast what the average value will be of a 2015 car 1 year from now, we basically need to move the 2015 cars 1 year down on the depreciation curve. A simple approach to get the forecasted value would be to take the average price point of, let's say, $40,000 and deduct the depreciation per year of $8,000 from this. Now this approach, however, neglects the uncertainty which is present in the current estimation of the depreciation per year. For example, if 10 cars would be put up for sale right now, that depreciation number of $8,000 per year would be altered slightly. Now to account for that uncertainty, we need to look to a forecasted range and simply cannot just deduct the depreciation per year from the current average value. Now if we take this forecasted range for the 2015 cars 1 year from now, we can see that the lower limit is $35,000, whilst the upper limit of the range is $41,000. Hence, there's a 75% chance that the average value of Alfa Romeo 4C with model year 2015 will be between $35,000 and $41,000 1 year from now. However, if you already own a 4C, you're more interested to see the depreciation curve for the used cars, as that gives you a more realistic approximation of the value 1 year from now. That's why we're going to filter the depreciation curve for the used and the new cars. Now if we apply that split, we end up with the graph over here, where the used cars are now displayed in orange and the new cars are displayed in blue. We can see a few interesting things from this graph. First of all, I find it a bit shocking to see that there is a significant amount of new cars for sale which have old model years. You can see, for example, that there are 4 new cars with model year 2017 which are not yet sold. Hence, they've been standing now at the dealer for 2 years, which is not a good sign. Furthermore, we can see that the depreciation curve for the used cars is flattening out extremely nicely for the older model years. In fact, between model year 2016 and 2015, the depreciation per year is almost completely gone. The average depreciation per year for a used car is, however, still quite steep and sits at $5,200. Now this is especially steep when you compare it to the German market, where the depreciation per year for the used cars was $1,800. Let's zoom in now so we have only the used cars and figure out what the forecasted value would be for a used Alfa Romeo 4C. That is shown in the graph popping up on your screen. In the graph you see now only the used cars, the depreciation curve and the forecasted value range. If we take again model year 2015 as an example, we can see that the bottom of the forecast range is $43,000, where the top of the forecast range is $51,000. This means that there's a 75% chance that the average value of Alfa Romeo 4C with model year 2015 will lay in that forecast range 1 year from now. Now because the depreciation curve is relatively flat for 2016 and 2015, we can therefore conclude that if you buy a 2015 or 2015 4C, you can be quite certain that the depreciation will be relatively close to zero and perhaps that you will get some appreciation in the value of the car. Now in the next graph I also included a worst case scenario, meaning that the future depreciation rate will be the same as the current depreciation rate. This is a bit unnatural, as normally the older the car gets, the less the car will depreciate, but it serves as a good purpose to see what would happen in a worst case scenario. Now if we look to the worst case scenario in blue, we can see that there's a 75% chance that the price point for a 4C will end up between $37,000 and $41,000. Now if you watched the video all the way till here, there must be something what you like. So please make sure to smash the like button, as it really helps to support the channel. Now if we further categorize the depreciation per year between the launch editions and the non-launch editions, we end up with the graph over here. However, as you can see, there are only launch editions for sale from model year 2015. this makes it impossible to derive an accurate depreciation per year number. Hence, we need to skip this depreciation per year distinction. Now if we move on to the final categorization, the coupes versus the spider, we end up with the graph over here, where we have in blue the coupe and in orange the spiders. We can see that there's almost no difference in depreciation per year, as both depreciate at around $8,000 per year. That means that it's time to move on to step number 3, which is the depreciation per 1,000 miles driven, and that is shown in the graph over here. And please note that I only included the used cars, as the new cars of course have 0 miles driven. On the horizontal axis we have now miles, and on the vertical axis we have price. We can see that the depreciation per 1,000 miles is not so steep, and in fact that after 15,000 miles the depreciation is almost gone. Now the average depreciation per 1,000 miles driven sits at $680, whereas it was $440 in the German market. Now if we differentiate the graph between the launch edition and the standard cars, we can see some interesting patterns. So let's have a look. The graph shows namely very clearly that there's no premium in the market for the launch edition cars. We can see that launch edition cars with the same mileage as the standard cars also have the same price. I think this is a bit strange, as one could expect that a launch edition car would sell for a premium over the standard car. If any of your US viewers knows why this is the case, please let me know down in the comments. I'm curious to find out. Now I also checked if there would be a difference in depreciation per 1,000 miles for the spider and the coupe, but I found that there was no significant difference at all. So let's skip that one and move on to step number 4, which is figuring out the best value for money cars. Now to find a car which offers good value for money, we need to include 3 of the most important aspects you need to look for when you buy a car. Number 1 is the price, number 2 is the model year, and number 3 is the mileage. Those are all considered together in the graph over here. You can see that we have a price, a year and a mileage axis, and that each of the cars is again represented in the graph. The white bubbles are the used cars and the black bubbles are the new cars. Now if we start to investigate the price, we can see that the cars which are priced over $50,000 to $55,000 are priced at a significant premium compared to the rest of the market. That means unless you want a new 4C, this price area is off limit for good value for money cars. Now if we start to look into cars which are priced under $50,000, we can see that the prices are not dropping anymore, but that mileage is increasing significantly when you move down on the price scale. This means that if you buy a car under $50,000 with little mileage, for example 5,000 miles or less, you get a car which offers good value for money. And this goes especially if you buy a 2015 or 2016 model, as we saw that these are not depreciating anymore and in fact might even appreciate in the next year. Now also if you're in the market for a new 4C, it makes sense to study this graph, as you can see that the new cars from 2016 go at a significant discount compared to the cars of 2018 and 2019. This means that you can buy in essence almost the same car, but at significant better value for money proposition. Alright, it's time to conclude on this depreciation analysis of the Alfa Romeo 4C, and I think it yields some interesting insights into the market. First, we can see that new cars are extremely hard to sell. We could see that there are 54 new cars for sale, and also that there are many old new cars for sale. So new cars with model year 2016 which are not yet sold. This in fact is quite worrisome, and I think this is also quite different from the European market. Now a good reason for this can be of course that the new 4Cs are priced quite high and that the depreciation per year in the first few years is extremely high. After all, why would you buy a new 4C at $80,000 if you can also buy a model year 2016 4C for $50,000 with less than 5,000 miles? Now moreover, you would be in essence buying the same car if you would buy a model year 2016 car than if you would be buying a model year 2018 or 2019 car. Now the differences between the old and the new cars are very minimal, and to my understanding the most important difference concerns a software update which can also be installed in the older cars. Lastly, we saw that the cars from model year 2016 and 2015 were almost not depreciating anymore, and that the forecast showed that they might even appreciate slightly in the next year. These cars, especially when some research is done considering the mileage, offer extremely good value for money. Now that was the depreciation analysis for the Alfa Romeo 4C, and it was also the first analysis in which I had a look to the US market. You can let me know down in the comments if you would like to see more of these depreciation analysis focusing on the US market, or whether you prefer the German or European market. Also, make sure to smash the like button if you didn't already do so, and to subscribe so you get notified when the next video goes live. And if you're still there, make sure to check out the depreciation analysis for the Porsche 996 Turbo over here and the one for the McLaren 720S over here.